I recently was in Florida, so I know you all missed me, And I was on the plane flying down, and I'll share an experience with you there in a moment. It was 2 weeks ago today, and flying home, I probably scared the individual sitting next to me because I was rewriting my will. And nothing like rewriting a will on the 40,000 feet above you, And as she looked over and saw the title page, I think she got a little nervous. Many stories about flying. I don't know. I have many experiences. The one that I probably shared with you in the past that took place a number of years ago, I was in my collar. I was traveling for the church, and my bag often gets flagged going through TSA. They pull it off the belt and they have to go through it. And the reason is I have this little black case. It's very small, and it's a mass kit. And inside it there's a small chalice, travel chalice, and paten, and crucifix, basically everything that you need in order to celebrate Mass, and it's in this nice black case that probably doesn't look so good to TSA as they're x-raying things. And I remember one particular time when the bag got flagged, and the TSA officer, she pulled that out and unzipped it and saw what was inside, and of course she first asked, "Is it okay to touch this?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, What is all of this for?" And I said, "Well, it's to celebrate Mass. I'm a priest if you haven't gathered." And she said, under her breath, "Mass. Yeah, I should probably go to Mass." Now, do you think that was the right thing to say in front of me, And I think as soon as she said it was one of those moments that you take a step back and said, "Oh, I really should not have said that." And so very politely I said to her, I said, "Well, it's not really that hard. There's a number of them, and I'm sure in this particular city, it was not here in Buffalo that this happened. I said, "I'm sure in your city there's many churches." And she immediately got, kind of a little defensive. Said, "Well, I work on Sundays here at the airport." And I could not even respond because this nice elderly lady behind me took over. She was waiting, too, to have her bag inspected. And she said, "Well, dear, they also have Mass on Saturdays if you work Sunday." And I just stepped back and I let the two of them go. It really was a beautiful moment as the nice elderly lady behind me spoke so lovingly about Mass and the Eucharist. She bore good fruit, that elderly lady. She gave great testimony to her faith. 2 weeks ago, I thought it would be an empty plane Super Bowl Sunday, but it wasn't. And the gentleman sitting next to me, when it came time that the flight attendant was coming through with the garbage bag to throw everything out, get ready to land, and she had come to our row. I threw my things in, and she probably did not notice that he had things, and she immediately turned to the row right across the aisle, and this gentleman started speaking some very derogatory comments about this flight attendant. And kind of looked at him, and I looked at the attendant. Thankfully, not even for a split second did I believe his assessment of her was accurate. And I really looked at him, I said, "You're a real jerk." And it took a few moments and a couple more of his comments for me to take a step back and say to myself, what has happened to you in your life that you've become so judgmental and really a relatively, by my assessment of a few words, cold individual. It was then that I was also thankful that he did not speak to me for the 2 hours of the flight. It may have been a tough flight. And eventually the lady turned and he threw his garbage out, and he made another rude comment. Thought how that fruit that he was bearing in that moment was not very good fruit. whatever happened to that man in his life that called him to be that way, really very challenging. What do we hear in the readings today? We hear about bearing fruit. The first reading, of course, tells us that the fruit that the tree bears really becomes a sign of the strength of the health of the tree. A healthy tree is going to bear good fruit, as we hear in the gospel, and a bad tree is going to bear bad fruit. A good tree can't bear bad fruit, and a bad tree can't bear good fruit. The gospel reminds us of that, the first reading, the gospel coming together. And maybe as we prepare for Lent, a simple question is the fruit that we bear. And not only our words, but our actions. And do the words and the actions form a consistent body of truth as to the type of tree that we are? I remember my aunt and uncle. I had several aunts and uncles, but one of them had a farm, if you will, a gentleman's farm in Lancaster. Now, they built their home in Lancaster in the 1940s, so that was all farmland, you know. Some of us remember that, and when we would drive out to visit Aunt Marge and Uncle Stan, we would often say, we're going out to the farms, you know, because it was still all farms out there. And I remember they used to farm the land, and as a kid on Wednesdays during the summer, we knew what we were doing, because that's when Uncle Stan would drop off whatever they harvested and leave it on the front porch of the house. So if we were cutting wax beans and green beans to blanch them and freeze them, or to help make, pickles or relish, whatever it was, you know, we knew we were working on Wednesdays. And he would often drop off bags of fruit. They had a whole section of the yard that were orchards, beautiful orchards, apples and pears and so on, and perfectly manicured orchards. Well, a few years ago, my aunt passed away. My uncle had died a number of years ago, and my cousins put the house up for sale, and I saw that there was an open house, so I thought I would go back and walk through the house one last time. I had spent so much time there. And although the house was in good order, when I looked at the yard, they had many, many acres of land. It was all overgrown. The orchards that once produced great fruit, some of the trees had died, and many of them were being taken over by other things growing up. And I thought how sad it was, because they put so much time and effort and energy into that orchard and all of their fields. Well, maybe our lives are the same, that from time to time just the difficulties of life can overtake us, and maybe very fruitful trees can become a little damaged, and fields that produce great harvests at times can get overrun. And that's really what Lent is about, to have us take that moment in time. Obviously, we all desire to be good trees producing good fruit. We wouldn't be here if you didn't. Obviously, we're all desiring that, but even those good fields need to be weeded, and the good trees need to be pruned and taken care of. And so maybe these few days that we have before we come for Ash Wednesday, maybe just take a few moments and think, what is it that needs to be pruned? What needs to be done so that the fruit of your life is even more pleasing to the Lord? We hear very clearly in the gospel, no student is greater than the teacher. And so as disciples, none of us have come to the level of Christ. There's something that we need to work on. And the gospel also warns us about hypocrisy. It's so easy for us maybe to see the faults of others rather than addressing the beam in our own eye. Whatever it is that we need, maybe more important than giving up the candy and the ice cream, to look at those more serious issues. If there's hypocrisy there, if there's judgmentalness there, if there's maybe a sense that we are, above even the Lord at times, that we know better than the gospel. Whatever those issues may be, take these few days to maybe choose that most important one, to really work at it these coming days of Lent, so that we emerge Easter Sunday bearing the greatest of fruit for the Lord.